I think we need a bit of a drum roll. We're moving on to language number one, and it is probably not going to surprise you. It is
SAR Experience.
Всем привет and welcome to another episode of the Volca Volcast with me, Connor Klein. This is the SAR Experience, and today I'm speaking to you once again from the lovely, beautiful city of Lviv in western Ukraine. Now, this video is obviously about which languages were the most interesting to learn in terms of meeting and dating beautiful women across the world, and it's based basically on my personal experience. Now, I do have other videos on the channel about where there are beautiful girls. I even have a podcast with my good friend Andy from the UK, where we go into where we think the 5 best countries for girls are, not necessarily most beautiful, but that kind of combination of personality, energy and beauty all combined. So definitely go and check that out. I'm going to put it below in the description, up in the card as well if you haven't seen that one. But today's video is going to be a fun video because it's, early evening here. It's actually getting dark quite late in Ukraine. It's probably already 9:30. And I'm about to go out, but I want to make this kind of fun video. So if you don't have a sense of humor, maybe you've clicked on this video for the first time, like a video on my channel. This is a this is a non-PC mainstream channel. Like, I give my real opinions based on my actual experience of traveling around, especially here in Eastern Europe, and learning lots of languages. I've actually learned more than 10 languages. They're actually exclusively Indo-European. I did study Arabic and Chinese for a while, but I didn't continue with those to fluency. But basically this channel is my real experience. So if you don't agree with the content, or you're someone who's easily triggered by just stuff that's not politically correct, not mainstream, then this is definitely not the channel for you. But considering you haven't clicked away already from this video, it's probable that's what you want, and that's why you are here on the channel. So in today's video, I'm going to get into it and just outline the languages that were really useful for me. Of course, if you've been following my channel for a while, you'll understand that I've learned, as I said, over 10 languages. Now, that doesn't mean I speak all of them to like native level fluency or anything. I would say that I speak 7 or 8 of them to a advanced level, and then others to kind of an intermediate level, and then there's some that I just speak basic, and there's some that I've even abandoned, like I mentioned, Chinese and Arabic, because I just didn't feel the motivation to go on and learn those languages. And really part of that motivation was girls, and I may go back and learn Arabic. I really had a good time in Lebanon when I went there about 18 months ago, I think it was now. It's actually coming on 2 years. So that actually motivated me to actually want, the Lebanese girls actually motivated me to maybe go back and learn Arabic at some stage. So I started this channel by actually with a couple of words in Russian. So if you're a regular viewer, which I assume you are at this stage, then you're probably going to guess that's going to be in my list. I'm going to give you 5 languages in reverse order and how they help me with dating. And there's going to be 1 or 2 surprises in there, so don't think that you're going to predict it all. I'm pretty sure you're going to be interested, and definitely if you have been learning languages or dating, or you found languages useful, then drop a comment below the video. Let me know and let the other viewers know about your experience with learning languages and dating, or just traveling, and how maybe you found the language barrier was hard to overcome, and in which countries maybe you were able to use English the most. All that good stuff is really interesting, not just for me, but for the other viewers. And we've been creating this community of commenters, and I really enjoy seeing that, and seeing, when I see one comment and then the thread below it when it's productive, and, guys showing their real experiences. So just before I get into the list, I am someone who advocates learning languages. Obviously, since I went and learned 10 of them, you don't have to be a language geek or freak like me to get value out of that, and you don't have to learn them to fluency either. But I find that if you learn the language, at least a high beginner level, really forces you to understand the culture that you're entering, and that actually helps an awful lot when it comes to dating as well. So that kind of culture information that's part of language learning is another reason to do it, not just the communicative skills, because of course you could just focus on girls here who speak enough English. And that's going to be easier in some countries than others. And in general, where the countries with the most beautiful girls, in my opinion, are actually countries where the English skills are not very high. So definitely you're going to get a good return on your investment if you do go and learn the language. So that said, let me kick into the list in reverse order. So language number 5 in 5th place is German, die deutsche Sprache. Now that probably comes as a surprise because, you know, you're watching this channel, you see where I travel to, and I think I only have maybe one video from Germany ever on my channel at the moment. Maybe I had two. I deleted one of them. It was on a different subject when I used to focus on actually languages exclusively and not on this travel experience. At the moment it's in Eastern Europe, but actually German has been a language that I found has really helped me, not just because I did have a German girlfriend at one stage and I lived in Munich, so I did obviously date girls there. Actually, most of them were not Germans, and that's actually one reason why I think you might be surprised, as I wouldn't rate German girls very high on the attractiveness scale versus other countries. Of course, there are notable exceptions, and I actually lived in Munich in the south of Germany, where definitely girls were a lot better looking than in the rest of the country, in my opinion. I thought actually there were a lot of beautiful girls there. A lot of them turned out didn't actually speak German as their first language, but nonetheless, actually in Munich there were a lot of beautiful girls in southern Germany, and I was obviously able to use German there, along with, honestly, I learned a lot of Russian and at times Portuguese, because there were girls who were beautiful, spoke Portuguese there that I met. But actually the main reason I put it on the list is not to do with Germany. It's actually to do where I've used it as a language with girls where it wasn't really their first language, or at least it wasn't the first language of the country where I met them. And that actually, when the country is right here in Ukraine, I've met a surprising number of beautiful girls in Ukraine who speak German, and actually to a pretty good level. It's a popular language amongst girls. I mean, English is, I would guess, the most popular language to learn as a second language in the country in general. In Lviv, we're close to the Polish border, so a lot of people speak Polish because it's obviously useful. It's their neighbor, and there are a lot of tourists that come here, a lot of visitors, and of course there are a lot of opportunities, economic and study opportunities, educational opportunities in Poland, so it is useful from that point of view. But really, I've been amazed by how many girls, especially here, can speak German. And also in Belarus I met quite a few beautiful girls who wanted to speak to me actually in German as well, rather than English if we were not going to speak in Ukrainian or Russian. Now, another place that's really, I'm guessing, going to surprise you about where I've used German, and I definitely met a lot of beautiful women there, was southern Brazil. Yes, in southern Brazil there are a lot of people who still speak German. That's because they had a lot of immigration basically in the late 19th century in particular, that was from Germany or from the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So there were actually a lot of German-speaking colonies in the south of Brazil. So I've actually gone to amazing parties wearing lederhosen, and all the girls are also in tracht, as it's known, like dirndl, the traditional top that you've seen from probably Oktoberfest. And I've actually gone to similar parties in Brazil. In fact, they're actually the world's second and third biggest Oktoberfests, or Oktoberfesten, are in the south of Brazil, in cities called Blumenau and Rio Grande do Sul. Now, Blumenau is in Santa Catarina, the state, and Rio Grande do Sul has a city called Santa Cruz do Sul, where the third biggest Oktoberfest, and that's actually bigger after Munich in Germany than any of the other German cities. It's pretty amazing. So there was a lot of girls who spoke fluent German. They spoke Hochdeutsch because they were learning it, and their ancestors spoke it, and there was still enough of a German-speaking diaspora there that they were using it. So that was also cool for me because didn't expect to get out of return on my investment of learning German. Of course, there I do speak Portuguese as well, so I could have just spoken to those girls in Portuguese. But sometimes there's a special bond and a rapport that builds easier based on that commonality of language and that shared experience. So definitely German, not Germany, comes in number 5 place on my language list for what was useful personally for me in dating and meeting beautiful women. And just before I leave the whole thing about German, a lot of the top models in Brazil, actually most of them come from the south of Brazil, about 80%, which has a high level of German immigration. And also actually Rio Grande do Sul, the most southern state, produces 50%, 50 of Brazil's top models, and that's actually where there's this high concentration of German speakers. So definitely that's something that's correlated: German immigrants and the German language, and beautiful women in the south of Brazil. So don't neglect that as a language for going there and meeting them. So coming in at number 4 is Espanol, the Spanish language, or Castellano as it's known in other parts of the world. And that's not really based on my experience in Spain, although I did meet beautiful women also in Spain. It's actually to do with the former colonies, Latin America, and in particular Argentina and Colombia, which produce really beautiful women. But there are a lot of other parts of Latin America where it's going to be, it depends what tickles your fantasy in terms of maybe, you know, the mix, especially if you go to Cuba, for example, which is more African in influence. There are beautiful women, and of course Spanish is the language used. So Spanish is of course a global language. I actually learned it in Washington DC, where I was living, and I actually lived very close to a Spanish speaking neighborhood. That's actually how I first started speaking it. And with Spanish, yeah, definitely the women in Argentina. Venezuela is known for its beauty queens, and you know, there's just that whole maybe half a continent after, you know, Portuguese is obviously spoken in Brazil, and Spanish will get you a certain amount of the way even in Brazil, because when I first started, on my first trip to Brazil, I did not speak Portuguese. I did speak Spanish, and I was able to use it. It was very stressful because the mutual intelligibility was not super high between the languages. It was helpful, but not amazing. But it did help in my first initial interactions with Brazilian girls as well. So definitely, you know, there are a lot of beautiful women in Latin America, and Spanish is definitely the language to learn for meeting them and traveling around there and having an amazing travel experience there. Of course, you've also got Spain and the 40 million or so. I wouldn't rate them as highly in terms of beauty as certain parts of Latin America, like Buenos Aires, for me, just amazing in terms of the number of beautiful women there. So definitely Spanish, and it's also learned by a certain number of people across the world because it is a big international language. You're also going to maybe get a little bit of extra interaction with it on that level, but definitely for a trip to Latin America, a no-brainer to learn Spanish. So a solid number 4 for el idioma español. Coming in at number 3 on my list is English, my native language. A lot of you don't know that. A lot of commenters, I should say, don't know that. I guess you knew that because you watch this channel regularly and you're a subscriber and you've whacked that notification bell. So yeah, English is definitely a language that's extremely useful, of course, for meeting beautiful women. I put it number 3 in the list because, I mean, I speak as my first language, so I didn't have to go and learn it. So obviously I'm even more comfortable and can lead and be more affirmative in English than other languages, which sometimes can be a disadvantage when you're speaking a second language and you don't speak it very well. It can be hard to lead women in an interaction, which obviously is going to improve your chances of success with them. But the English language, of course, is the global lingua franca, and the more educated people are, the more likely they are to speak English. Of course, then you've got the former colonies, you've got the US, you've got Canada, you've got large parts of Africa, you've got large parts of Asia where it's spoken. And in Latin America, it's not really spoken at all when I think about it. You just got British Guiana there. But overall, it's also, of course, spoken by, you know, models in general, because that's the international language for business. And in the modeling industry, basically once girls move, and they might not necessarily go to, say, New York or London to work in fashion in the modeling industry, they're actually maybe in Asia or maybe India or maybe Milan or somewhere else in Europe, like Paris, for example, but they're going to learn English for the work. So definitely their English language skills, and they are, because they're models, definitely in the higher echelons of beauty, no matter where they're from, they're going to be able to speak English, and that's definitely a reason to learn it if you don't speak it for that reason, of course. You know, I always advocate learning other languages, but definitely, of course, if you meet a girl and you don't have a common language, you know, a language in common, like you don't speak her native language and she doesn't speak yours, then of course the default normally is English. And I've also, of course, been a benefactor of that myself. You know, I don't speak every language that I travel to, you know, in the countries that I travel to. So I do have to rely exclusively on English at times. You know, at times there are girls who are kind of like English language groupies and they want to practice their English. That can be another demographic for you to hit up. And actually what I say to my clients and my friends who travel with me is, like, if you're in a country like, say, we're in Lviv this evening and you don't speak Ukrainian and you don't speak any Russian, and you start talking to a girl, you open a conversation and it's clear she doesn't speak English, then I would always say just move on, because it's not really worth your while investing. So definitely it is the language, of course, for when you're traveling and you don't speak the local language. That's going to be the default in general. So now that we're getting closer and closer to number one, we're at number two, and that is Brazilian Portuguese. Now I did say Brazilian Portuguese in general, being a little bit facetious by saying Brazilian Portuguese, but that is the reason for the beautiful girls, as I already alluded to, is of course there are a huge number of international top models from Brazil, and it's not by accident. Girls in Brazil, especially in the south, boom, beautiful, and they have that great energy and they're a lot of fun, and in my experience a lot of them are completely sex crazed. So that is definitely a language that you want to learn for your trip to Brazil, or if you're meeting Brazilians when they're traveling here in Europe, because they do travel quite a lot. Brazilians, you do meet a lot of them. Actually in my home country of Ireland there are a lot of Brazilians as well, so it's always been very advantageous for me to speak Portuguese. I don't personally find the girls in Portugal that beautiful, and actually not in all parts of Brazil do I find them beautiful either. I think there is definitely also a social class divide there at times because of diet in particular, and education about diet. A lot of Brazilians do get quite fat, unfortunately, because of the diet, and that is at times, from what I can see, connected to socioeconomic status and not being educated, not having access maybe to better food, and they tend to overeat. So I'm not going to say that you go to Brazil and everywhere is full of, Gisele Bündchen's, who's, you can probably tell from her last name, of German descent in part. She's actually German Italian, if I'm not mistaken. And also you have Alessandra Ambrosio, for example. Also, that's an Italian name. That's going to be this, but they're all from Rio Grande do Sul, right in the south. So those three southern states, Paraná, Santa Catarina, and Rio Grande do Sul, can produce the most models, and definitely in my experience it is the part of Brazil with the most beautiful women by far. Also in São Paulo you're going to meet a lot of educated girls because it's a commercial capital, and definitely girls who want to model, they go to São Paulo first of all to train and see if they can make it as a model, because that is of course the commercial capital. That's where all the money is, that's where the modeling industry is based in Brazil. Rio is a very special city. I would not say that. Actually, the girls in Rio de Janeiro are particularly beautiful. They're not as beautiful in other parts like in the south, but there's definitely some sort of sensuality there in the city. And when I talk about sex-crazed Brazilians, quite often they're from Rio or Rio de Janeiro. And definitely there, it's a special place, and it's a place that really I've met a lot of beautiful girls. Anyways, even if in the south of the country tends to be a little bit higher on the looks scale. And I've actually met Brazilian girls traveling in Europe, as I kind of alluded to there earlier, and that's just been such a great icebreaker. If you can speak Portuguese, of course, you have that bond, and it separates you obviously from the other guys who are hitting on them, probably speaking in English. And a lot of times they don't speak English, Brazilian girls, because that's something I should go into, is that the English language skills in, say, Latin America, because we're talking about Spanish and Portuguese, are pretty low in general. So definitely speaking those languages is going to help you a lot if you're traveling there, or if you're meeting them when they're traveling here in Europe. I think we need a bit of a drum roll. We're moving on to language number one, and it is probably not going to surprise you. It is the Russian language, Ruski Язык. Yes, it is the region that I think has the most beautiful women in the world. So we're talking about Russia, we're talking about Ukraine, where I am right now. Although I'm in a city where most people use Ukrainian in daily life, you can of course speak in Russian in the center of Lviv. No one is going to get upset with you or rude to you. But local girls here, not all of them can speak very well in Russian, so it is better to know Ukrainian here than Russian in this particular city, but in the general region. So Moldova, it's also still spoken pretty widely. Obviously Belarus is official language. Then if you go into Central Asia, you have like lots of countries there where it's either the lingua franca or still an official language. Also enjoy using in Kazakhstan, for example. Then you have like Russian diasporas. It's a big one in Germany. When I lived in Munich, as I was referring to, actually most of the girls that I was with were Russian speaking. There were so many beautiful girls from the former Soviet Union who lived there. Also Berlin has a huge Russian speaking community. If you go to the US, of course, you have Brighton Beach. It's actually a beach club in Odessa that has the same name, or Little Odessa in the States, where it's obviously, you know, after the fall of communism and maybe just before it, there were a lot of Russian immigrants who went there, Russian speaking immigrants, Soviet Union, people who moved to the US, and that's where a lot of them went. I'm sure that's changed a bit overall, and now, you know, we're like, how many years since the fall of the Soviet Union? 28 years, so they probably moved to lots of other parts of the US, but case in point, also Canada has an awful lot of people from the former Soviet Union, especially Ukrainians who moved there, although a lot of them actually speak Ukrainian rather than Russian. But in general, just there's the diasporas, there's the international modeling industry. It just has so many girls from Russia or from the former Soviet Union who speak Russian, as well as the source countries themselves, that for me, it is easily #1 language to learn if you want to meet more beautiful women. Undoubtedly, it's a country that, it's the language in which I have definitely dated the most girls in. If I was looking at the most beautiful girls that I've dated, you know, along with Brazil and actually Germany. I did have a very beautiful German girlfriend as well to buck the trend, but basically most of them have been Russian speaking. I also, you know, kind of once my friend from Odessa, my German friend Michael, he actually got me to make up a list of, you know, what countries have I slept with girls from. And when I looked at those Russian-speaking countries, they basically dominate, along with Brazil as well, in that kind of like category. So it's definitely the language with which I've got the highest return on my investment. The Russian language is a difficult one to learn. It's definitely going to take you more time to learn than, say, learning Spanish or, you know, learning German even, but it is going to be easier for you to learn than, say, Chinese or, you know, Arabic. It's definitely when I got the most return on my investment on, in terms of, you know, the beauty of the girls and just the number of girls, because I do spend a lot of time in this region, so I get to use it. Obviously, it just has other benefits outside of beautiful girls, but definitely for me, it is easily #1 and the best investment I have made in my language learning. I do have a friend who travels with me. Actually, my sensei is still to learn proper Russian. I always think that's his Achilles heel. Shame on you that after all these years, you still have managed to learn it. But as I said, if you don't speak the local language and the girl you're trying to communicate with doesn't speak English, then it's best to move on and focus on other girls who do. So that's my little fun video about, you know, languages and dating beautiful women, and where I found, you know, they were useful, in what context, in what countries, and which languages, of course, I got the most return on my investment. As I said at the outset, I've learned over 10 languages. They are Indo-European, the ones I actually progressed with. I did also learn some Chinese and Arabic, but I did discontinue with those because I didn't have the necessary motivation at that point. Definitely drop me a comment below if you have similar experiences or ones you want to share. Smash that the like button, squeeze the red subscribe button. But if you get to the end of this video, you're obviously already a subscriber. Liking the video always helps me know if you've enjoyed the content, so I make more of this kind of style, or I see that you didn't enjoy it, so I just stopped making this and focus on other things, because I want this channel to be as much value to you as possible. Just a little thing, if you haven't hit that notification bell, just whack it now so that you get notified, because I'm going to be making lots of amazing content this summer from here in Ukraine, for example, also in Russia and in Belarus very soon again, so you definitely don't want to miss any of those vlogs and stuff. And yeah, we've been talking about languages on, I've been talking about language in this video, and you've been listening to me. And what are you doing next weekend? I'm going to be with a client in Odessa, at Mama on the Black Sea. Could be you, could be you. If you really want to live the Zara experience, and how you're going to find out if you can do that is, you can write me an email at connorklein@zaraexperience.com, or DM me on Instagram at Zara Experience. That's my handle there. And I'm going to send you a series of questions to see if it's a good fit for us to work together. And then if you're pre-selected, We're going to jump on a short 10-minute strategy call together, and then we're going to see if you're a good fit to come and live the Zara experience yourself in person. I'm super excited because I'm getting lots of new clients, guys like you coming out here. When I say like you, I have to be clear. The Zara experience is not for everybody, and I noticed that when I talk to potential clients on these calls. There's just some people where it's not really for them. Like if you don't want to expand, push your boundaries, expand your own development, and come somewhere that's a little less traveled, by the masses. Because if it was that easy, if all the masses were here, then it wouldn't be so interesting. It'd be overrun, to be blunt about it. So what I've noticed in these calls is that the Zara experience is not for everybody. So if you're not willing to push yourself, develop yourself, travel somewhere that's definitely less traveled than the masses are going to, and of course if the masses were here, it would not be the same experience. So definitely, if you are looking for a mainstream experience, it's not for you, right? This is just what I want to make clear. Also, if you're not really interested in pushing yourself and dating, the most beautiful women in the world, and this is also not going to be an experience for you. I had that kind of impression from, a call I had, last week that, just being with mediocre girls because they were slightly better looking than in this guy's hometown was what he was looking for. And, that's not the Zara experience. Don't come here with me if that's the experience you're looking for, because we're going to be dating and we're going to be meeting and partying with some of the most beautiful girls on the planet. So, if that's something you're not comfortable with, then, there's no point in writing me. But I know that if you're still at the, on this video at the end, it is something that you really want to do. I've been outlining the 5 languages I've learned to meet and date the most beautiful girls in the world. So, write me a message. I used to be a lawyer. I used to work in an office. I can feel your pain, sitting there just wanting to come and experience something like this. I had to do it all by myself. It was a process, of trial and error. You don't need to spend that time if you have me in your corner here with you. Obviously, you can rely on that experience and that energy that I'm going to give you and the connections and all that good stuff. I appreciate you also can't live this full time like I basically do, because that's how I set up my lifestyle. But you can experience it for a weekend, for a week, for 10 days, for a couple of weeks with me here. So definitely write me and we'll jump on that call very soon. It's the end of this video, and I'm just having a look around and seeing if there are any beautiful girls that I can talk to in Ukrainian and not just drunkards who come up to me and pester me. I wonder if I could speak to mosquitoes in Ukrainian or Russian and tell them to piss off. I've been eaten all over here. That's not by a girl, just a full disclosure. That's by the mosquitoes here. But I'm going to look for a girl to bite me in the same place. So that's the end of this video. Enough of me rambling on. Do pobacenia. Do svidania. See you in the next video.
Zara Experience.